iRacing right now.
He's got traction, he's got rid of the outside of both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taken Anderson! Anderson's up top!
Oh my god! Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly. This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?
This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Hello everyone and welcome to the final round of the 2019 Season 2 V8 Supercars official Strength of Field series, and what a way to end it. We're at the gorgeous countryside of Belgium for the Francorchamps endurance layout, and it's a long one too. 26 laps around the elevation changes around this circuit, and it is sure to be a good one as the drivers are currently setting their qualifying laps at the moment. And in this gorgeous sunset, early sunrise, I should say, it looks fantastic with the cars working their way around this circuit. I'm Bo Albert. Alongside me is Mr. Zachary Handler with JK Kennedy in the director's box. And Zach, at the moment, they're in qualifying. The times are relatively close for what is such a long circuit for these cars. But the race, what a length it is.
Yeah, it's going to be a pretty long one this evening, about 50% or more of a normal Grand Prix run here. So it's going to be pretty long, close to an hour for these guys. And we're expecting a pit stop as well. They do have a fairly large amount of fuel they're allowed to start on board with tonight. 95 litres is what most of these guys will have in the tank on the starting line. But yeah, it's going to be very difficult in these conditions, although you know, we're seeing some pretty close times up the top. We might see a few little trains of cars throughout this evening's race, but you know, it's always good racing, especially in these V8s, so it should be a good race tonight.
Yeah, it absolutely will, and I think one of the highlights for me, at least, every time a series does come to Spa, is that run down the Camel Straight on that very first lap. It's always crazy. It's always a little bit hectic as well, as everyone's just trying to get any position they can as they make their way down that long straight. But you can see the times are just flooding at the moment, and Corey Preston slams one in with just 17 seconds left on the clock and gets him up onto the second row of the grid. So for the 16th highest I rating on the grid, that's not bad. But with how long the laps are, you don't get any more than 2 laps. Once you've done those 2 laps, you're done, because we are already done with qualifying. The drivers will turn their attention to the race start for 26 laps, and of course a pit stop as well. Tires shouldn't be too much of an issue with the track temperature, currently extremely low at just 18 degrees Celsius. But let's run our way through the 24 car grid that will be contesting this race, and it's all led away by Mr. Cooper Webster, our championship leader. And whilst I don't like to ruin the championship too much, looking very, very set to comfortably take this one as well. Jackson Suslan-Harlow lines up on the front row of the grid with Corey Preston, Brett Loxton, and Wayne Burke, your top 5. Marlon McMullen takes things off the third row of the grid with Jack Boyd and Sean Thompson 7th and 8th respectively. Michael Taliatic and Thomas Hinds, your top 10.
Yeah, Matt Stratford going to be starting out of 11th position. He's got Mihail Ladishov alongside him. Mario Vlasic had a spin in qualifying, but he's gotten himself up on a row 7 in 13th position. Craig Jones for CMR will be starting from 14th. Matt Muggleton, good to see him back out on track for Delta Force Racing, starts 15th alongside Steve Jansen in 16th position. Matthew Deere is going to take us from 17th alongside Greg Sharp in his Stealth SimForce car. Scott Gamble will start from row number 10 alongside Rob J. Harris in the sister Sim Racing channel car to Thomas Hinds. Simon Pitt, Ben Christensen, Dave Cameron, and Luke Page will round out our 24 car field this evening. And I'm just having a look at those qualifying times at the top of the timesheets. There are about 6 or 7 cars that I think can really win this race tonight. So everyone's going to have to get themselves settled in for a bit of a long one here, but it's all going to be very interesting for the next hour or so.
Well, not just interesting for the next hour or so, I'm interested for the next 30 or so seconds when the lights go green, because the very first corner they've got to negotiate is the quite frankly terrifying R Rouge or Radeon, whatever one you want to pick. I'm not going to start that YouTube comment war right here at the moment because we can't. Because the revs are rising for the final time in 2019 Season 2, and as your championship leader on pole position, does he get away at the start of the race? The answer is yes, he does. A great start there for the Evolution Racing Team driver. The lights are on, and they're blazing their way in towards R Rouge. You can see side by side already for second place, almost touching the 2 Ford Falcons, making their way up the hill, and now the absolutely daunting run down the Camel Straight. Will everyone survive? Seeing a few names dropping and changing already as the slipstream takes effect. Of course, the cars at the back have a longer run into R Rouge and down the Camel Straight, so they're carrying more speed, easy to make passes. And at the moment, the only direction Jackson Susan Harlow is going is backwards. He's having a nightmare of a first lap. Great start for Cooper Webster, out to a half a second lead already. Positions changing as they run through the comms, which is a great section of corners. But then you come down this little straight here, and you're faced with a Ravage, a very long right-hander. So easy to run the car a little bit wide, and then you have to tuck it all the way to the inside. And so far, so good at the moment, Zach. It's been pretty clean.
Yeah, pretty of a nightmare start there for Jackson, but a nice start for Corey Preston. He's already up into position number 2, starting to form a little bit of a train behind him already, and that Cooper Webster is starting to break away from this little train here, and Brett Loxton is going to start making moves on Corey very soon, I am sure. Jackson still looking to make his way back past a couple of cars that he lost out to on the first part of this lap. Wayne Burke looking to also move himself up. We saw a great battle between him and Brady Myers and Brett Loxton last week as well. So he's looking for a repeat performance from last week's victory, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Once you get that confidence, you're able to just build upon it and just get even more performance out of yourself. So for Brett Loxton, that's what he'll be looking to do. But at the moment, he has to hunt down Corey Preston, who does look to have quite a fair, strong chunk of pace at the moment, as Jackson Susan Harlow thinks about a move into the bus stop chicane, which is one of the better opportunities around this long spa circle. You can see very easy to make it happen initially, but you have to get the second part right. And it looks like he does get the traction down, and will demote Wayne Burke down another spot. And Wayne could be in trouble here because he's caught on the outside, and Marlon McMullen is no slouch in these cars, so it's all too easy to dive up the inside. Try not to collect Jackson Susan Harlow if you can, but makes it happen as well. And check out Corey Preston. He's under a lot of pressure from Brett Loxton right now. We were talking about the confidence he has. Not enough confidence to go side by side through R Rouge though, but Wayne Burke almost does, but has to give up to Jack Boyd as well.
Yeah, if you're in a car with a bit of downforce, you might have considered that, but in these V8 supercars, 2x2 through Eau Rouge is just not going to happen without some absolute bravery, and even then, sure, you wouldn't be seeing it very often. Just having a look here at a tail end of an incident for Craig Jones in the CMR car, and just see if there's... Oh, he's gotten a hip check there from... Hard to see who that was, but got a massive hip check there on the exit of turn number 1, and is unfortunately now going to be sitting in the pit lane for the foreseeable future. Just having a look, Wayne Burke's dropped back now behind Jack Boyd. So he had an absolute nightmare getting hung out to dry down into the bus stop by Jackson Susan Harlow. And that's cost Wayne 3 positions there. So pretty tragic state of affairs for him at the moment. But I'm sure he'll be bouncing back. But especially when the cars are in such tight quarters and you've got these massive braking zones, especially into the bus stop chicane and turn number 1. And even, down past Eau Rouge, it's pretty easy to get caught out just in the wrong position, and for a couple of guys in the train to go through on you. And unfortunately for Wayne Burke, he's suffered quite badly from that. Everyone now just getting into a little bit of a rhythm here. Marlon McMullen's looking pretty good tucked up in behind Jackson, Suslan, Harlow, and I suspect that they'll be doing a fair bit of fuel saving. We saw a lot of fuel trickery in last week's race at Imola, and especially here at Spa, there are a lot of good opportunities to do quite a bit of heavy fuel saving. So I have to see how that goes. Brett Loxton, surprisingly, hasn't been as aggressive on Corey Preston since that lunge that he was going for up in Eau Rouge. We'll see if he has the same kind of power as he comes through turn number 1 this time. He's pretty close to Corey. Just needs to make sure that he can get the traction out. We have seen Corey in the last couple of races really drop off, later in the stint. That car becomes quite uncontrollable. So that's another thing that Brett will probably have on his side as well, as we see Michael Taliancic and Matt Stratford. Well, I said 2x2 doesn't work. These guys are going to show if it can be done, giving each other plenty of racing room there, and a very commanding move there by Michael Taliancic up the inside, round the outside, and up the inside again through Eau Rouge and ready on a Matt Stratford. But now Mario Vlasic has a good run coming down the straight, and he might be able to do the pair of them here if he's feeling brave. Around the outside is Mario Vlasic, late on the brakes, and nice commitment, but unfortunately he's he's still going to pick up one position there, so not too bad for Mario, but not quite able to do the 2 for 1.
Well, I'll tell you what, they're braver than I am. I would not be doing that in a V8 Supercar, but absolute kudos to those guys. I don't think they even came close to touching through that section of the corner, so fantastic display of driving there, and both moved themselves off one spot. Matt Stratford probably a little less enthused about how that went down, but nonetheless doing a good job as well, as we're just seeing them come through this very quick corner section, which is a long corner, a lot of load through the tires there, and you can see, Sean Thompson just gets a little bit sideways, and Thomas Hinn says thank you very much down the inside at Campus Corner, and he should be able to make it happen unless Sean is able to come back on the inside. Not happening this time around, so Thomas Hinn makes up another spot and doing yet another nice little drive there for Hinsey. Don't see him in the V8 as much as we perhaps used to, but always a good driver to watch, and as is Matt Muggleton, who makes a move on the Hale ladder shove as well. So a lot of passes happening down in your midfield, but the front of the pack is definitely a lot quieter, especially for Cooper Webster, who has a 2-second lead advantage at the moment. And I've got to wonder if Brett Loxton isn't being so aggressive with Corey Preston because he simply doesn't think he has a chance against Cooper Webster at the moment, because he does appear to be in a league of his own.
Yeah, I mean, Cooper did sit on top of qualifying by give or take 0.4 of a second, so it's a pretty considerable advantage to have, and especially in these first 4 laps. I mean, that's pretty much what he's been pulling out the last few laps, is 0.4 of a second, as we're just having a look at Rob Harris here, defending from Simon Pitt in the Sim Racing Channel car. But yeah, I mean, they could be doing a little bit of fuel saving. They could maybe, be thinking about how long this race is. It is a 1-hour race. He doesn't want to go and do anything too drastic, especially with Corey Preston up ahead of him. I'm not saying Preston's a dirty driver, but he does like to defend his position. He does like to race close, and Brett doesn't want to risk the car too early, so he might just be sitting there pretty contently. No one else is really challenging him at the moment, but he could also, as you said, Bo, not have the pace in that car at the moment. And Cooper Webster, to his credit, is driving fantastically at the moment, and really deserves that 2-second lead that he's bounced out to at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, we saw Matt Stratford get past earlier on. He's doing everything he can to get it back, but that's just not the way to do it. Bold effort once again by him, but just locking that inside front, which if I'm driving the V8 Supercar, that's all that happens, is locking the fronts. But nonetheless, a great try, and just doesn't happen this time around as we go back to a little bit further on in the field with the likes of Jack Boyd and Marlon McMullen as well, as they're fighting their way through the Fanyas and Campus section of corners. And it's good to see these guys all out on track as well. And Wayne Burke just lurking in the background, you can see there in that bright blue, the One Performance racing car, just struggling a little bit after those opening few laps, like you mentioned, where he just got put out of the flow just a little bit, getting past a few times. And at a track like Spa, flow is everything, just being able to link up the corners, get the sequences right. And there are a lot of sequences to manage around this circuit, and it's very hard once you do get pushed out of that. But you can see as they make their way through Blanchimont now just how much steering lock Jackson Susan Harlow is having to put in, because he, of course, is behind the dirty air of Brett Loxton as they come into the bus stop chicane once again. And I have to say, that was very kind of Brett Loxton there. There was no real attempt at all of a pass there by Jackson Susan Harlow, and Brett just kind of left the door open, as in, go through if you want to, but just did not need to do that. And now he's getting a bit punchy into La Source, and well, that's a bit of a saucy move, I have to say. He doesn't get the traction how he would have wanted, almost a bluff from McMullen there, so that's a little bit of a weird moment there for all this pack, but maybe it was a tactical decision by Brett Loxton, because look what it's done now. Not again, guys, not again. My heart cannot handle that kind of a move, but it has pushed Jackson very wide off the exit, so his run down the Camel Straight has been completely compromised, and he's also lost the toe from Brett Loxton as well, so Loxton maybe actually played a bit of a good move there, but don't get on the grass. That is not the way to do it, but he's going to try anyway. A massive move there from Jack Boyd, pulls it up, just about, contact made. Wayne Burke's going to be the beneficiary, potentially on the outside, almost full wide, contact into Lacombs at the moment. Jack Boyd still side by side with Wayne Burke, but this is getting a bit chaotic now, and I'm not entirely sure why all this is going on. There's going to be contact again into Ravage. A hip check there for Jack Boyd, gets pushed wide, and Jackson Susan Harlow might be able to make this happen. Has to go the long way though, through No Name Corner, and does manage to hold it just about. Contact again puts Jack Boyd all kinds of out of shape in the MSS sponsored car there, and I don't know, Zach, to me that was all a little bit unnecessary, didn't need to happen, but for Brett Loxton it's played out beautifully.
Yeah, it's got pretty spicy there, didn't it? And have a look at that,
That
on
is
the motive
insane.
simulation replay. 2 wheels into the grass for Jack Boyd, and yeah, I mean, they all just went a bit deep, didn't they? Everyone kind of made a mistake there, and then Wayne wanted to get in on it, and it just got a little bit messy, and I think a little bit of desperation wanting to reclaim those positions. I mean, you know, no harm, no foul, and that little bit of a bump and run there for Wayne on Jack, and then Jack really got the raw end of a couple of little hip checks there, so he's now got Thomas Hinz breathing down his neck as well, so Hinzy's done a good job to catch up to these guys while they've been biting at each other. And that's really spaced out that train a little bit, so I suspect that they'll kind of just try and bunch up once again, but that just goes to show what one little altercation like that can really split things up for a train that's that close. And we saw 3 or 4 cars overtaking each other there, and it only really takes one minor thing like that to happen to really cause the train to break up. And I think Marlon probably benefited from that the most. He hasn't lost too much ground to Brett up ahead of him, but he's now at the front of that train, and he can start reclaiming some of that gap, as we see some of the cars really desperate to keep up. It was Wayne Burke wanting very wide at the top of Radion there, and definitely getting more than his fair share of 4 wheels over the exit curb there.
Yeah, and well, that's something we haven't really touched on at the moment, is that these drivers, of course, only have 17 incident points, and Spa has such a history of racking up incident points. So easy to, it's often dubbed as a safety rating killer for a lot of drivers, because it is so easy to just extend a little bit, just use a little bit too much track, and you can find yourself scoring incidents as you go on board with Mario Vlasic at the moment, staring at the back of the Pursuit sim racing car. But these drivers do have to be careful, because at Imola, which isn't as bad of a circuit for incidents, we saw the drivers get disqualified. You think back to Brady Myers, who isn't actually here this week, but we saw Brady get disqualified at Imola, which is a lot less harsh than Spa is. So for these drivers, 26 laps, they do have to be a little bit careful, especially if they start banging doors and getting the odd 4X.
And that's what you said before about the flow, Bo, is that's why the flow is especially even more so important at Spa, because you need to make sure that you're keeping it within the lines. I've had my fair share of DQs around here just by one X's. It's tempting to use the extra road, and especially in these V8s, they can really slide very, very wide if you have a minor moment on the throttle. So they really need to make sure that they're being very smooth, keeping everything within the lines.
I've got to cut you across just very quickly here, because Matthew Deere is not having the best of times at the moment. You can see stopped on track and trying to spin his way around. So let's get a modem simulation replay up. We'll find out exactly what Matthew Deere has done to make himself a bit of a deer in the headlights at the moment. You can see the Cariff Motorsport car, which is a very good livery, and the AstroTurf. It's easy.
Ooh, that's a heavy hit.
You don't often see the AstroTurf spit out that hard though, so we'll have a bit of a listen here on throttle and just see how the wheel spin of the car picks up. And you can see just touches. Oh, he was sliding before he even got to the AstroTurf, and the Astro just kind of finished him off there.
I think it was actually the camber of the curb there kind of gave him some extra rotation from because he was already sliding, as you said. I think that extra rotation from the wheels hopping up on the curb at that angle just sent the car beyond the center of gravity that it was capable of taking there. And unfortunately for Matthew Deere, that was actually a pretty heavy hit into the Armco, so he might suffer a little bit of damage from that and maybe have to limp around for a couple of laps. Expecting the pit stops to start happening within about 6 laps or so. I think there's a fairly wide pit window here, and especially for some of the guys in this train, they really might think about coming in for the undercut. That being said, we saw last week at Imola, the lap times did not come down as dramatically as we expected. And at the moment, the man out in front, Cooper Webster, his last lap was a 220.4. His fastest lap is a 220.4. So he's still lapping at a very reasonable pace. And be interesting to see how these guys approach the pit strategies this evening, just because that undercut capability isn't quite as much there as we would normally expect with these colder conditions.
No, we saw last week the drop-off was so small, and like you said, Cooper Webster's just nailing the laps at the moment, just lap after lap, able to hit the exact same time, which is great for him. Not so good for his competitors, it has to be said, but you did mention the pit stop window was pretty large, and it's about lap 9 to lap 18, so a huge window there. And for these drivers, that gives them a lot of room to play around, but with such a long circuit, you cannot afford to find yourself getting stuck in traffic, because unlike most circuits where you might be able to find the odd little gap, here at Spa, because the drop-off can be quite large in pace, you're very likely going to come out in traffic, which isn't ideal. Their only saving grace, though, is the endurance pit lane, which is extremely long. That could save them a bit, but already after just 8 laps completed of this race at the moment, the field spread is already 56 seconds from our race leader to Matthew Deere.
Yeah, that is, that is very good point. But that being said, I mean, most of the cars are down in the kind of, I guess, 15 to 25 second area there. So they've got to, and I mean, as you said, that pit lane is so painfully long. It's probably going to be around a minute in the lane, if not more here. So they might come out around Dave Cameron or Matthew Deere, who's about a minute behind the leader at the moment. So they've only got one car to really navigate. So coming in early might not be so bad, but if they stay out for a couple more laps, that might not be the case. As we're just having a look here at Luke Page, going down the inside of Rob Harris there, and a nice clean move for him. Puts him up a position, and this is Scott Gamble on Mihail Ladishov there. Nice move from Scott down into the carousel and into no-name corner now. Really difficult corner in these V8's no-name corner. You just want to get on the throttle so easily, and that road does not let you put down the power as easily as you might think. So we're watching now Wayne Burke, who's gotten himself back up into 5th position and has caught back up to Marlon McMullen. So we saw these cars were pretty spread out before, and the only person that hasn't really been able to do much is Jack Boyd, and that's probably because he's got quite a significant amount of pressure on him right now from Thomas Hinz, who, as you said, Bo, only makes a couple of rare appearances in these V8 supercars, but he's always very reliable in anything that he drives. He's definitely capable of getting a top 10, and proving so right now, because Jack Boyd is, I think, 2nd or 3rd in the championship right now, and putting a big amount of pressure on him as he just gets a little bit of a slide coming through the very high speed corners of Spa-Francorchamps into the bus stop, and he's going to have to look for another way around Jack Boyd at this stage, but he's really putting some good pressure on right now.
I don't really want to speak too much about Thomas Hinz because I'm very biased towards those Sim Racing Channel cars. I think they're just one of the best liveries out there, and I'm also biased towards their sponsor, Into the Am. Please sponsor me. Some of the best shirts you'll see out there. But on board with Brett Loxton at the moment, and he's not having an easy time either, because Marlon McMullen is still close behind, and so is Wayne Burke. So, as you did say, they are all bunching together just a little bit once again. And last lap around, it was actually Brett Loxton who had the slowest lap time of the the entire top 6 at the moment. So for him, it's not being the most ideal race, and you can see McMullen thinking about the inside, just kind of looking, not really committing. But Thomas Hinz is committing a little bit more, thinking about it on Jack Boyd. Wasn't quite able to get the overlap though. So for Thomas Hinz, he'll have to fight for yet another day, but he is sticking close. As you can see, Wayne Burke just lurking in the background of Marlon McMullen as well. And Jackson Susan Harlow's back in this fight as well. So they're all back together again. We'll see if they can keep it a little cleaner than they did last time. But at the pace they're doing, they're not closing in on Corey Preston and 100% not closing in on Cooper Webster, who was about 0.6 of a second quicker than anyone else on track at the moment. For Brett Loxton, he just doesn't have the pace that he had in qualifying when he managed to put this car fourth on the grid.
Yeah, well, I mean, we were talking about whether or not he had the pace or whether he was doing a bit of fuel saving, and it does seem at the moment like he doesn't have the pace to be keeping up with the front runners at the moment. And he's got a couple of cars behind him that I'm sure could probably pick up the pace a little bit and are looking to get by. So we just see Thomas Hinz having a big moment. Very much, very large amount of off-throttle oversteer coming into that corner there, and still pushing very hard to try and get past Jack Boyd. And I have to agree with you as well, but I think those Sim Racing Channel cars look absolutely fantastic. And Marlon McMullen now trying to square up Brett Loxton. Brett using all the road and a little more to try and keep ahead of the multiple time champion in the iRacing V8 Supercars official series. And Marlon putting all those years of experience to good use now as he gets fantastic traction coming out of the bus stop and coming into La Source. He is going to have that one done surely. Brett Loxton trying to carry momentum around the outside, but both of them got good traction here. Oh, we're going to have another brave move into turn number 1. Who is going to butt out if either of them are? We saw Marlon tuck in earlier. He's learned that you need to get the second part right to get the overtake done. And he's not gotten the best run. It might actually be a little bit difficult for McMullen here because Wayne Burke's got a good run on him as well, and Jackson Susan Harlow's also having a look. But McMullen's going to go for the late dive, come out and late on the brakes, but not quite enough to get past Brett Loxton, who runs a little deep now. McMullen pushing him through the corner, unsettling Brett there, very much so. But you got to be careful with bump and runs around here. These guys are usually pretty good with redressing as they go down into Bruxelles now. Not going to get it done there. No name. Well, it's very difficult to overtake there unless you are right up on long side. And Puon in a V8 Supercar, I don't think that's going to happen either. So we're really looking at the bus stop, La Source, and probably coming into Lecom are the 2 best or 3 best places to overtake here. Marlon's still showing his nose here and there. Oh, and that's running very wide for Wayne Burke. That's going to open him up to Jackson, who's might be able to go for a move into Stavilo here. Not quite for Jackson Susan Harlow, but keeping up the pressure. And Brett Loxton, very bad run. Oh, side by side now as they come down the back straight. This is going to be a drag race to Blanchimont, and that is a very scary thought for the both of these guys, Bo.
Yeah, I do not want to be on the outside of Blanchimont, and neither does Marlon McMullen, but he doesn't mind having the outside potentially. But check out behind them, they're going to go side by side as Jackson Susan Harlow and Wayne Burke. And Susan tried it, couldn't do it. McMullen's going to think about the bus stop now. He's driving very aggressive at the moment as Loxton doesn't meet the apex. He wanted to, couldn't do it. And McMullen and also Wayne Burke decide to go for an entirely different apex. It is pit stop time on lap number 10 for some of our race leaders. The pit lane delta time for Greg Sharp, who pitted just a little bit earlier, was 1:24. So this pit stop lane is not small.
Yeah, it's very, very long. And also, because you're not going so fast when you come into the pit lane, but you lose a lot of momentum when you're coming out of the pit lane, it's actually probably more of a disadvantage to be pitting earlier here because you have that delta to make up coming out of the pit. So be interesting to see how that goes for these guys. That being said, though, the guys who pit later will be very slow in comparison to the guys who have just come up Eau Rouge and will be going full whack, as is Michael Taliancic, looking to go round the outside on the Valkyrie Sims racing car of Sean Thompson there, and he is going to get that move done. Very nice move from Michael in his Pursuit Sim racing machine. And that is job done for Michael Taliancic. Moves himself up into 7th currently, which is about net position 9th for the time being. So these guys scrapping for the final spot in the top 10. And for the time being, it belongs to Sean Thompson. And he's got Mario Vlasic, who's looking pretty hungry behind him, wanting to probably make a challenge in the next couple of laps, as well as we have a look. And Marlon McMullen has come off pit road comfortably ahead of Wayne Burke, and now's really the go time for these guys. Super critical. Oh, Hinsey, big move up the inside of Jack Boyd, and it's not going to pay off for him unless he can hold it around the outside and get the inside line into Stabilo, which he will do. And Jack Boyd's not going to make it easy for him though, as he continues to hold that position around the outside, and very much a commanding swoop around the outside, taking it back is Jack Boyd in his Gone Rogue Motorsports machine. Great little trade from those guys, and some good hard racing, but Thomas Hinz is going to have to find another way past the Gone Rogue Motorsports driver.
Yeah, but fair credit to Hinsey. That was a great attempt, and he really almost made it work. As we can see, Brett Loxton comes into the pits. Jackson Susan Harlow decides not to. Jack Boyd comes into the pits. Thomas Hinz elects not to. So lots of different variations here at the moment. We do have multiple cars coming into the pits, but still even more staying out. It's a very large pit window, so there's no real disadvantage, no real advantage to when you pit. Apart from, like you said, of course, getting back up to speed down the Camel Straight with how the pit lane does fire you out. Almost shortcutting Eau Rouge as well. So for these drivers, lots of opportunities to make their positions off track as well. It's just about making sure you time it right. And at the moment, we do have about 50% of the field taking their stops. So maybe this was the right lap to take it. Maybe some will push it a lot later. I can imagine Cooper Webster will be going right out to at least 15, 16 potentially, because he's in a league of his own now, 7.5 seconds over Corey Preston. So great drive there. We can see Marlon McMullen. Now, Zach, I've driven a lot of versions of Spa on different titles and everything, and every track, and if it's not laser scanned, has a slightly different version of Spa, okay? What version was that?
That was the version. Don't they have like track limit rules in WEC that don't exist or something like that?
IMSA, I think it is.
Oh yeah, it's IMSA in Europe for him there. That was definitely. I'm not sure you can use the cold tires excuse for that one, Marlon. You were pretty close to the end of the lap there. We're just going to have a look on board with Marlon McMullen, because it's going to be very close with Brett Loxton, but that is job done for Marlon McMullen. So at least within a lap or two, it does seem like Wayne it's going to pay dividends. Yeah, so Wayne Burke getting through as well. It's very interesting that those guys were able to get through so easily. Just having a look at the pit stop times.
Big difference.
Marlon McMullen, yeah, that's where the difference was made, was in the fill time in the car. So that's definitely going to play out these strategies for a little later in the race.
I'm very actually concerned by those fuel numbers though, because the field actually has a very wide range of fuel at the moment, because Greg Sharp was only 20.5 seconds in the actual box himself, and he was one of the first guys to pit. You compare that to the likes of Jack Boyd, he was, what is that? That's 4.7 seconds longer in the stop. And with Spa being so fuel hungry, I have to wonder how many have just miscalculated just a little bit here.
Well, I mean, to be fair to...
oh, Matthew Deere is blown up down the Camel Straight. By the looks of it, that is a very smoky KRF Motorsports Holden. And of course, we saw him have that massive hit through Fagnes just about 5 or 6 laps to go now, and I think that engine has finally said goodbye. You can see coming through Eau Rouge now, and through the top of Ruddy, just in the compression, I think it's gone. We saw a bit of smoke there, and I think he'll go once again here. So for Matthew Deere, that is an absolute nightmare.
Yep, that is, it's not been a great race for Matt, so he's got a couple of weeks to come back and have another shot at it, and it's a disappointing way to end the season, but you know, That's the way it is in racing sometimes. So we have quite a flurry of activity on the pit lane now. Quite a few drivers starting to come down the pit lane. You can see on screen. I think that, I don't know, if it was me, I'd be running this thing as dry as I can. I mean, the fuel's coming out of the car. The lap times are still, I mean, Cooper Webster's last lap 2:20.7, fastest lap 2:20.4. So lap time's not dropping him off. The lap times aren't dropping off for him. And in fact, Marlon McMullen, who's just completed his first lap, full lap on his new tyres, went faster by only 0.03 of a second, and Wayne Burke went faster by 0.2. So the difference isn't there, and presumably when Cooper comes out, he'll have much less fuel in his car, and he'll be able to actually go even harder than in his first stint, as we saw Jack Boyd just coming out ahead of Michal Ladishov there, and got a few more cars exiting the pit lane. It was Mario Vlasic who was coming out ahead of. But so now we've got Wayne Burke up into 6th behind Marlon McMullen, who's in 5th, but Michael Talyancic and Dave Cameron ahead of them are still yet to pit, as are
race leader in.
Corey Preston and Cooper Webster. So Cooper's come in now, and we'll see Corey Preston has also hit the lane. So only one car, it seems, is continuing to circulate at the moment, and it's no surprise that that man is Michael Talyancic. It's a fair knack for running the tank for as long as humanly possible, and works out most of the time for him. So we'll see how it goes today as we have a look. Thomas Hinz and Jack Boyd, who were having a battle before, things just starting to smooth out for them. So watching Jack just try to reclaim that position. These guys have both pitted as well. Only cars not to pit are Michael Talyancic and Dave Cameron at the moment. So most of the race have decided to split it into a straight 50-50. A couple coming in earlier, but I was pretty surprised, truthfully, to see just how much of an advantage Marlon and Wayne came out with. But most of the other drivers have had stops that are just a little bit longer. So it might be interesting to see how that all goes in the last few laps of this race, as Jack Boyd seems to have picked up a bit more pace now, and he's starting to put a lot more pressure on Thomas Hinz here.
Yeah, he is, and that was actually a much larger gap just half a lap ago, so Jack's really putting some pressure on, really finding some pace at the moment, as Hinsey just locks up a little bit heading to La Source. And the tough thing here is that actually we have to just change focus for a second here, as Marlon McMullen and Wayne Burke are both going to get past Corey Preston. So all of these drivers at the moment that are going a little bit longer are losing out. So for Michael Talyancic and Dave Cameron, that is horrible news, as we go back to Thomas Hinz and Jack Boyd. They're going to go side by side down the Camel Straight, mono a mono, door handle, but only for so long, because Thomas Hinz makes that very easy, and Jack Boyd does get back to where he was before. But back to my point is that Jack Boyd lost that spot to Hinz because Jack Boyd went a little bit later than Thomas Hinz did. Corey Preston lost his spot because he went later than Wayne Burke and Marlon McMullen. The same goes to Brett Loxton. He pitted earlier. He lost spots as well. So for Dave Cameron and Michael Talyancic, I'm not sure staying out was the right call. I think they could have noticed that trend and they should have come in a bit earlier, as Michael Talyancic actually has this huge slide into the bus stop and finally calls it a day for those tyres.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm pretty surprised by the fact that the undercut was, it's very peculiar that they managed to undercut these guys by so much. I mean, those guys were like 4 or 5 seconds behind Corey Preston. So that's a pretty considerable margin to make up. And Corey's laps before that, I didn't notice anything, abnormally slow. So it's, the pits have really changed things up here. So we've now got Cooper Webster in the lead, followed by Marlon McMullen and Wayne Burke. That's effectively, of course, we still have Dave Cameron, who has not quite hit the pit lane yet, who I think might be technically in the lead of the race for the time being, but effectively that is your top 3 at the moment. And now Corey Preston's got quite a big job to do here, because he had good pace in those early stints, but now he's got to do it all again, and he's got to get past 2 cars, which have also had some good pace throughout this race as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot going on at the moment for these drivers, and it's just a case of everyone just trying to find their rhythm, trying to find out where they can go. But for Marlon McMullen, he's managed to escape Wayne Burke at the moment, so that gap has extended just a little bit between those two, which I'm a little bit surprised about, because those two were very close before, but they are just spreading out just a little bit, which is odd to see. But nonetheless, Wayne Burke did have a slightly quicker lap time last round in the form of actually around 0.4 of a second. But that gap has extended since the pit stops, but we'll have to wait and see how it pans out come the end of lap 26, which is still 11.5 laps to go. So endurance is a bit of a factor in this race as well, as we see Sean Thompson actually getting past the driver Michael Taljancic down that long back straight, as well as Taljancic exits the pits, once again proving just that longer run into the race on that first pit stop wasn't the way to go. But look at Wayne Burke now. He's heard what I've said, and he's really started to apply the pressure to Marlon McMullen. And if I was Marlon, I would not be too confident of having a podium finish at the end of this race, even though we still have Dave Cameron yet to pit. It's not looking good because he is being caught by all the drivers behind him. And so far in this race, every time we've seen Marlon in a battle, he's always been a little bit aggressive and just cost himself a bit of ground.
Yeah, and I'm sure, we saw how aggressive Wayne was last week at Imola. I'm sure that aggression level hasn't subsided at all, and we are in the final race of the season as well, and he'll be looking for maximum points and a bit of iRating as well. So I'm sure that he'll be looking to get past Marlon, as he's applying quite a lot of pressure now, and it's not making it easy for Corey Preston to catch up either. We'll have to see how his first flying lap is out of the bag. For Marlon McMullen, it wasn't particularly great, 2:21.4. So he's actually not lapping very quickly at the moment. Wayne Burke was half a second quicker the last lap, and is looking very confident on the brakes as well. Manages to pull it up, surprisingly, given the amount that he was closing into McMullen there, but just not able to get the traction down quite as nicely as McMullen. I'm sure we'll see Wayne going for a move down in past Eau Rouge there. And we're just hearing as well that Mario Vlasic has possibly been disqualified for too many incident points as well.
No.
He's there? Yeah, there he is. He is there. Although it has to be said, he does seem to be picking up quite a few throughout this race. So we're having now a look at Jackson Suslin-Harlow on Brett Loxton, who lost out pretty badly from that pit cycle. And Jackson has a good run on the Zuva racing car at the moment, closing in, but it's just not going to quite be enough as they come into the braking zone, and has a little half-hearted nose shove there, but not going to be anything there for him.
He thinks about it though, he just tries to get up the inside just a little bit there, but couldn't quite do it through Lecombe. So Jackson was still trying all the way to the very end of Lecombe's, just couldn't make it happen. But you can see that perhaps in the next lap and a half or so, that move will happen, because he does seem to be a lot quicker, and Loxton just struggling really quite badly at the moment. But we go back up to this, if we go up back to Marlon McMullen, Wayne Burke, because they have now been joined by Corey Preston as well. So this has now turned into a 3-car fight, because Corey has been running some pretty considerably quicker lap times compared to these guys. Marlon McMullen, a 21.3, Wayne Burke 0.4 quicker, and then Corey Preston half a second quicker than Wayne, so 1.3 seconds field difference, as Brett Loxton and Jackson Suslin-Harlow find themselves going side by side through the camper section of the corners, and Jackson wanted to keep it around the outside there like Thomas Hinz did to Jack Boyd earlier in the race. Couldn't quite do it though, because of course the longer the race goes on, the more marbles that will actually build up on the outside of the track, which iRacing is fully modeled. So you do get marbles that do cost you quite a fair bit of grip when you run over them as well. They don't cost you any straight line speed, because he is closing and closing through Blanchimont. But you have to time this right. Brake earlier than your opponent. It sounds weird. Brake earlier than your opponent and get the run into the boss stop, which he's got. Looks to the inside. There's Jackson Suslin-Harlow. He wants the position down to the inside of the bus stop. It's such a big braking zone. He outbrakes himself a little bit. Squeezes. Contact! And around goes the TTL Esports car. And Brett Loxton will drive off into the sunset as it's side by side in the background as well between Thomas Hinz and Jack Boyd. They're going to see what they can do down the front straight into La Source. Another big braking zone for these drivers, and how will this go? Hopefully a little bit cleaner. Indeed it does. Thomas Hinz gets return serve on Jack Boyd if he gets the exit, which he hasn't. So ladies and gentlemen, once again we go side by side through our Rouge potentially. If Hinz is feeling brave, he's losing speed, so he might want to give this one up. And indeed he does, but what a sequence of corners there, Zach. And it all went just a little bit wrong for Jackson Susan-Harlow.
Yeah, very unfortunate for Jackson there, but Hinzy was wise to back up behind Jack Boyd there, get the cleaner run through the second part of that corner there, and just unfortunate that Jackson ran himself a little bit deep into the corner there. It kind of put Brett Loxton in a position where he could only take a very acute angle to the corner, and Jackson probably should have taken that a little more into account when he was trying to go around the outside there. So good hard racing between the two guys there. Unfortunately, Jackson came out lesser because of it, but he doesn't have a considerable gap to make up. He didn't lose out super dramatically there, so he might still be able to get back up to Brett Loxton and challenge him before the end of the race. But we've got some pretty fast pace out of this pack that we're looking at right now. Corey Preston being the quickest of them. He is absolutely flying right now, but not as much as our race leader, Cooper Webster, who's just gone in and punched in the fastest lap of the race. He's gone about 2 3/10 faster than his previous best lap. To a 20.254 is the fastest lap for him. But Corey Preston just a couple of laps ago actually did a 2:20.3 as well. So
with an off track though.
With an off track though, yes, that is true. But he is still circulating quite quickly compared to the cars that he is chasing. So looking to make an overtake and willing to do anything to catch up to these guys is Corey Preston. And that is very close between Wayne Burke and Marlon McMullen there. Wayne now piling on the pressure. He can see the JMSR car behind him, and he knows that Corey Preston's going to be wanting to come through. So Wayne's probably putting a little bit of pressure on himself to get this move done fairly quickly, and he's gotten a nice run out of La Source there, and coming through Eau Rouge, if he can take a little bit of speed out of it before he comes into the corner here, that'll allow him a little bit more exit speed so he can get on the throttle a little bit earlier, and that's what he needs to overtake Marlon McMullen down the end of the straight here. But he used up quite a few off tracks early on in this race and might not have as many as he likes to use. Marlon already getting defensive as you see the one performance car closing in round the outsides, late on the brakes for both of them. Wayne tucking back in as Marlon just locks it inside front there. And it's going to be round the outside and then down the inside for Wayne Burke. That is a fantastic move. As they come into Bruxelles now, he's going to have to brake nice and deep as he does to get alongside. Careful not to run himself too deep. He's run himself very deep. Marlon McMullen hung out to dry. Corey Preston, a very opportunistic move from him, and he makes up a position. Wayne Burke now has a bit of breathing room. Marlon McMullen going to try and get the position back as they come through Pouon, but tucks back in. He knows he's going to hurt his chances of getting back on Wayne Burke too much if he tried to go for that move there, and has tucked back in. So Wayne Burke's got a bit of a run here. Doesn't have to worry about the cars behind. And Marlon McMullen falls to the back of this little train here.
Yeah, well, that was a great little exchange from those drivers. And I don't think it's entirely done yet, because I don't think McMullen's too happy about being behind Corey Preston at the moment. And you know, that's probably not right for Marlon, because he does seem to be one of the more off-the-pace drivers of this little battle pack, but he's just over-driving so much, just sliding it around and just forcing the car into corner speeds it's not entirely comfortable with. So for Marlon McMullen, we'll have to see how he continues on, but I don't think it's in his best interest in this race to try and fight Corey. As you can see, he's already managed to just extend the margin just a bit more, but we will see what can happen here as we're looking on screen between Jack Boyd and Thomas Hinz. Hinz almost touching the grass as he turns into Blanchimont. Fairway back though at the moment, but we'll see if we can force the issue heading into the Bustle chicane. The nose is there, the car is there, the rear brakes aren't quite there, but he makes the apex. Plenty of room given, wants to get the cross back though, get the traction down, just can't do it though on Jack Boyd.
Yeah, he's very deep on the brakes there, and just managed to pull it up inside, and this is what happened to Jack Boyd that opened him up. Oh, big slide as he came over the exit curb through the second Stavilo there, and that is going to kill your momentum big time, and we saw the amount of pressure that he came under subsequently of that. Thomas Hins looking for another good run up through Eau Rouge here. Remember, better to keep it nice and stable through the first part of the corner. Get on the throttle earlier so you have more top speed at the end of this straight. And he's closing in the sim racing channel car, but I suspect a little bit of aerodynamic disadvantage on the front left of that car means that he's not quite able to get there. Very close though, almost rubbing the bumper of that Gone Rogue Motorsports machine as they come down into Bruxelles now. And Thomas Hins still looking for a way past. These guys have been battling for quite a long time now. They've traded positions about 3 or 4 times and looking for new and creative ways to get past each other are Jack Boyd and Thomas Hins. And Thomas has really got the drive out of No Name Corner there. A little bit of a look into Puon, might even give him a rub on entry there. And a wide entry will give him a strong exit, but there's a pretty short run into the next set of corners, and he's going to have to keep on finding creative ways to get around Jack Boyd here and have a look back up the front. Corey Preston now right on the heels of Wayne Burke.
Yeah, and we'll see how this goes, because Corey really getting a little bit sideways there out of that long right-hander there of, I believe it's Paul Frere corner, but for Corey Preston, he's probably just hurt his exit just a little bit, but thankfully he gets another chance. In some cars, you can run this corner flat. That's very aggressive on entry, though. I was going to say, if you can actually slow the car early on entry into Blanchimont, you can really focus your exit and momentum and really make something happen. But you can see there, he's just too fast, too slow, sorry, through that section of corners. Wasn't able to do it and can't make it happen. Neither can Jackson Suslan-Harlow, and neither can Thomas Hins either. So all those battle packs not quite happening at the moment. So we go back up to Corey Preston, who we'll see what he can do through this next section of corners. Wayne just locks the inside front a little bit there, but does actually get a very nice exit. So nothing happening there. And there is something happening though for Thomas Hins. Looks up the inside, can't quite do it though.
Yeah, very close to getting into Boyd there at the apex, and that's a pretty scrappy run through Eau Rouge for Wayne Burke there. Just took a little bit too much curb on the inside bump, and that pushed him just a bit high and wide. Good enough to keep him ahead of the 2 drivers behind him for the time being. And we have seen Corey Preston drop off. I just wonder if he's starting to push a little too much in that car and just use a little too much of that tire. And Thomas Hins goes down the inside, but way too deep for Hinsey. And he has to give that position back to Jack Boyd and might even have a bit of a slowdown to go with it. And Corey Preston now, he's been piling on the pressure for the last couple laps. Oh my gosh, that's Jackson Suslan-Harlow almost going around, trying to get down the inside on Brett Loxton there. And Brett going through No Name Corner, gets a big slide. Harlow looking for a way past as they come into Puon, going to go down the inside. Late on the brakes for both of them. Holding it around the outside is Brett Loxton. Going to have good momentum coming into the next set of corners here, but he's have to be brave. Can he keep it there? He's got the inside here as they come through campus corners now, and he is going to keep that position. Nice trading of positions there between those 2 guys, and Brett Loxton will hold on to position number 5 for the time being. And have a look. These guys are so close to each other. There's got to be no less than 2/10. Little dab on the brake there for Corey as they get very close on the run up to Blanchimont there. So close between all 3 of these guys. Who's going to be the bravest as they come down into the bus stop? Big defense there from Wayne Burke, and all 3 of those guys managed to get through very nicely. Good run for Corey Preston out of the bus stop, and Jackson Suslan-Harlow is going to go down the inside of Brett Loxton once again. These guys keep running each other as close as they possibly can through the bus stop. Corey Preston down into La Source. Very acute on the entry there. Not a great run out, but Wayne Burke ran wide, and that is going to give Corey Preston the advantage as they come into Eau Rouge here. Who's going to be braver? They're both going to go side by side. Corey Preston is going to come out on top. Look for McMullen here. He might get the 2 of them. Big loss of momentum for Corey Preston. He might have to change lanes and go to the inside here for McMullen. We'll have to see what he decides to do. He's going to try and hold it around the outside. 3 wide as they come down into Lacombe here. And it's going to be Wayne Burke who pulls it off Fantastic stuff there from the low
McMullen!
performance driver.
And he's up the inside. He's trying to get past Corey Preston as well. Side by side out of the comms. This battle does not want to give up at the moment as McMullen throws it down the inside and will demote Corey Preston to his back bumper once again. And Corey Preston doesn't like his back bumper. He just gives him a massive shove in the rear through that ravage section of corners. But wow, what a few laps that was. That was incredible stuff. And are we sure we don't have the lap count wrong? Because I swear they're driving like it's the final lap at the moment. But now
well, we're getting pretty close.
We're getting close, but we still got 5.5 laps. We might not have enough race cars left for a race in that period of time. But for Wayne Burke, he's in the best chance now just to try and put his foot down and really run away, because McMullen doesn't have the best pace at the moment, or is maybe just trying to fuel save a little bit with that very short pit stop that he has done. But he really just doesn't have the pace by the looks of Wayne Burke. So for Wayne, this could be his best opportunity just to run away for P2.
And have a look at this battle pack now. We saw Thomas Hinz and Jack Boyd going at it. Well, Brett Loxton and Jackson Suslin-Harlow have been going at it for a long time. And now two battles have become one, because we have a 4-car train for 5th and beyond. And a couple of these guys have been working very hard for this race. Wouldn't it be good to see Thomas Hinz come away with a top 5 after all's said and done this evening? He's only got about a second and 3 cars up ahead of him to get the job done, and he's got some good pace in that car. Jackson Suslin-Harlow, after so long, finally gets the job done, and Kenzie's going to come through after Jack Boyd has to go for a big check-up there. It's going to have to be ultra defensive for Harlow as they come in to Lascelles. A big dive to the inside for Thomas Hinz on the inside of Jack Boyd, and they might even be going 2 by 2 by 2 as we come into Eau Rouge here. Brett Loxton, though, is going to be the man with the he's going to be at the head of the train here as they come into Eau Rouge. But now he's got 3 very feisty cars with a lot of momentum that are going to gobble him up as they're all in the slipstream. And that is great for Jackson Suslin-Harlow as we see McMullen defending from Corey Preston there. Harlow on the inside. Boyd behind, having for a look as well. And there might be... Oh, it's very close between these guys. Good room left between both drivers there. And Harlow is going to have the inside very close on the exit. And a big swing to the inside for Hinzie to try and go down the inside at Bruxelles. And Brett Loxton's run extremely deep. That opens him up once again. And they're running side by side into No Name. These guys are just going for it right now, and I suspect that none of these guys have many incident points left, which is why they're leaving so much room. But we are loving it because it's making for great racing as they're going 2 by 2 through Pouon. That is fantastic stuff from these 4 drivers as Hinzie gets a bit loose on the exit.
It just doesn't stop. The battle keeps on going. It's 2 by 2 every step of the way through this Spa-Francorchamps circuit. Any place that we thought wasn't an overtaking opportunity, they've turned it to an overtaking opportunity. It was a 4-car train. They keep this up, and it's a 6-car train because we've got Mario Vlasic in the background also coming up, as well as Michael Taljancic, who has the freshest tires or the most recent pit stop of them all. So they've all got to be careful, but that is some of the best racing I've seen in this series, and I've been commentating on it for over 2.5 years. That is fantastic to watch. And I can't wait to see how this unfolds, because we still have 4 laps left on the clock. The battle up the front has just subsided just a little bit now, but this battle really has not, because look at this! Down the inside goes Jack Boyd on Brett Loxton. Can't quite make it happen, but does get the overlap on the exit. Might be able to do something with this as they go side by side down the front straight. Loses the overlap though. You can see they're all just trying to feel each other out, just trying to get a bit of an advantage as Boyd finally manages to get the overlap down the inside of Brett Loxton. Room is given once again, and we're once again staring down the barrel of side by side through Eau Rouge, but Loxton just losing the momentum, and he should not have an overlap through Eau Rouge, so he has to sit back and just try and make something happen down the Camel Straight. You can see they're all setting up their run, but Thomas Hinz is the one with the most to gain here. You can see he just pulls out, gets the overlap now on Brett Loxton as they go side by side. They'll have the slipstream of Jack Boyd as well, so everything's coming up Hinzie at the moment as they make their way towards the braking zone of Lecom. You can see hard on the brakes for Brett Loxton just a little bit later and does manage to hold the position, but Hinsey does get the inside as well. All Loxton has to do is to hold the inside here, and he should be able to feed Hinsey all the way back to Mario Vlasic, and Vlasic will probably go for this. He's always an aggressive driver. Hinsey knows that. Defends the position into reverse, locks the rears a little bit though. Fortunately does make the apex through this long right-hander, which descends down very rapidly, makes the car very hard to control, but for the first time I've seen in just a little while, Zach, they've actually managed to settle down.
Yeah, well, I mean, Mario Vlasic and Michael Taliancic are still having a little bit of a scrap back there, but yeah, the flow-on effects from this battle is so dramatic, and it's allowed Jackson Stoosland-Harlow now to just stretch his legs a little bit and pull just a tiny gap on Jack Boyd, and Thomas Hinz is really applying the pressure to Brett Loxton as well now. Runs a little bit wide on the exit of campus there, but he's looking very good, and I suspect that if he didn't have that damage on the front left of his car, he might even be running a little bit better than he is at the moment. But it's also good to see Taliancic and Michael Vlasic so close to a top 5 as well, as we've just heard that Matt Stratford has been disqualified for too many incidents in this race, and that one is confirmed this time as Hinsey now goes for a look down the Zuva racing machine of Brett Loxton, manages to pull it up. He's going to have to go round the outside, carry the momentum into La Source. He's got the inside line already and will probably get that move done, although that Zuva racing car has a couple of ponies underneath that hood, and it's not going to be as simple for Hinsey as he would have liked. It's going to be a drag race now down into Eau Rouge, which I can't believe we've seen that happen so many times today. He tucks in. He's going to go for the extra momentum on the exit of the corner. And you can see already he's picked it up. He was slow on the entry, got on the throttle early, and look how much it has paid off for him already, side by side with the Zuba racing car as they're coming down the Kemmel Straight. And surely that is going to be job done for Thomas Hinz as he moves himself up into 7th position, and a great drive from Hinsey. Brett Loxton not going to make it as easy as he would like, but the position belongs to Thomas Hinz in his sim racing channel car. Great exchange from those two drivers. And oh no way. Ladies and gentlemen, you may have just noticed that Brett Loxton has disappeared from your screens. We talked about it earlier in the race. Incidents are aplenty here at Spa-Francorchamps, and Brett Loxton has suffered immensely. He has just been disqualified from this race. And who was the other one? Who was the other one?
It was
Jay?
Michael Taliancic.
Michael Taliancic. So that's 2 top 10 contenders out of this race.
That was massive. I was screaming into Mike the entire time, but I had it muted because Mark Tatum. Nonetheless, that is a race-changing thing, and it's not stopping the race-changing thing. They're not stopping. Corey Preston, 4th place in your race, gone. 4th place, no more. Jackson Stoosland-Harlow has been promoted. This is just going crazy at the moment. We said Spa will bite for incident points. I didn't think it'd bite all at once. This is insane. Lap 24. If you're going to get disqualified, is apparently the lap to do it because everyone is going, but this is insane. Cooper Webster, probably the only driver safe on incidents at the moment, making his way onto the Kemmel Straight for the penultimate time at the moment, but everyone's shuffling up. It's now Jackson Stoosland-Harlow in position number 4, Jack Boyd P5, Thomas Hinz in 6th, and Vlasic 7th. And Sean Thompson moves himself into 8th as well, so all change at the front of your field, and apart from Wayne Burke and Marlon McMullen, who are within 1 second of each other, that's probably the closest battle for our top few drivers. So it's all spread out a little bit with all that chaos, which perhaps isn't the biggest surprise with everything that was going on, because that was some of the best racing I have seen in this series once again. Of course, it gets a little chaotic at times, but what V8 Supercar race isn't a little bit chaotic?
Yeah, that is such a shame for all those drivers, and especially Corey Preston. He had been running so strongly and was running in such a great battle up the front, but always seems to come just a little bit unraveled towards the end of the races for Corey, and so very unfortunate to see for him, and also Michael and Brett having a great run as well. But that's promoted a couple of people into top 10 positions. Matt Muggleton and Sean Thompson, as you said before, and Scott Gamble is now sitting on the bubble of the top 10, and a great run for him in his DFR machine. For a top 10 in a Monday night strength of field race is not a bad result at all, and I'm sure that Sean Thompson and Matt Muggleton will be pretty pleased with that as well. Thomas Hinds started 10th and is up into 6th position, so great for him. And Mario Vlasic is also going to walk away with potentially 2 top 10s in 2 weeks also. So good couple of weeks for Mario, who's been racing in this series for quite a long time, usually sits more towards the the top 15 positions around there, but good to see him sitting up in 7th tonight. He's up 6 positions, so a good drive from him. McMullen and Wayne Burke, though, as you said, closest battle at the moment, with the exception of possibly Jack Boyd and Thomas Hinds, who have been battling for a while, but they're a little more spread out. We are on the final lap now, so for Marlon McMullen, now's the time to get something done if he wants to, and he's already off to a good start. Much better run out of La Source than Wayne, but Wayne had a much wider arc and subsequently actually carried a fair bit of momentum out of the corner. It's all about getting it right through here. A little bit of a dab on the brakes for the drivers. Not quite the same as a Formula One car. You don't have that downforce planting you to the ground and allowing you to just absolutely flat-foot it up that hill. And both of these drivers being very cautious, I'm sure, with 1 lap to go. And we don't know how many of these drivers, how many incident points they have left, but I think a couple of these guys would only have 1 or 2 left at this stage, Bo.
Yeah, absolutely. There can't be too much incident saving at Spa, especially when you're in a V8 supercar, and there's always a little bit of door banging as well, which, you know, for the likes of Brett Loxton and everything, they would have had a little bit of a buffer potentially of 3 or 2 incidents still left in the bank, but 1 4X and, well, that's over your limit, so disappointing for those guys. And Spa's always going to be a track that claims the odd casualty, but we'll see how it goes. Actually, we do have a pass going on as Scott Gamble is having a big fight at the moment. Matt Muggleton as well with Mihail Ladashov. Out of nowhere, this battle on the last lap is really ignited, and they're all scrapping it at the moment, as there's actually 2 teammates in here as well, as they all scrap it out for 9th place at the moment. Of course, they were fighting a long way outside the top 10, just a few laps to go, but with all the carnage that has happened in this penultimate few laps, it has allowed them to have a scrap at the top 10, which is always what they want, always willing to pick up the odd few positions when the chance comes. And they're making the most of it at the moment, as Scott Gamble leads his 3-car packs, and Matt Muggleton trying to go with him. Mihail Ladashov just falling off a little bit and are not able to do much with it. But we do have to turn our attention very quickly to Cooper Webster, was absolutely dominated from the front here tonight. I don't think there was anyone that ever came even slightly close to challenging him. He's going to walk away with a 20.5-second lead, and the 2019... Oh, out of nowhere, there's also carnage going on for Wayne Burke and Marlon McMullen at the line. As I'm trying to say, Cooper Webster, of course, wraps up your championship. He's your 2019 Season 2 champion in the iRacing V8 Supercar Strength of Field Series, and a few burnouts to go with that as well. Great job there, as the rest of our field does begin to come across the line now. We have to go back to Matt Muggleton, though, as he tries to make something happen on Scott Gamble. Does he gamble with an opportunity into the bus stop chicane? Doesn't quite line the run up as well as he could have wanted. He'll have to be very deep on the brakes, which he does, but too far back. Cannot do anything with it. And I think Scott Gamble is going to get away with a last lap pass for position number 9. A great drive there for the DFR racing driver.
Yeah, good little battle between both of those guys, and good to see them coming home in a top 10 position. But yes, looking at Cooper Webster now doing some well-deserved victory donuts, and I'm sure he's chucking a couple in there for his championship celebrations as well. First official iRacing V8 Supercars championship for Cooper Webster, who is also on the pro roster for Evolution Racing Team in their GT competition as well. So good to see Cooper taking away a championship. A very young driver as well. Possibly, I don't want to go ahead and say it, but I will say that possibly he could be, I think, the youngest champion we've seen in the iRacing V8 Supercars series at least. And it was Cooper Webster who took home your race win this evening, the final round here at Spa-Francorchamps. Wayne Burke managed to hold on to position number 2, and Marlon McMullen took the final step on the podium this evening. Jackson Suslin-Harlow promoted late after Corey Preston ran out of incident points towards the end of that race. Jack Boyd came home with a top 5. Good run all season for Jack, but unfortunately just falling a little short in the championship hopes, and hopefully he'll be able to take it home next season. Great run from Thomas Hinz for a rare appearance from him, coming home in 6th position after starting 10th, and great battle with Jack Boyd all throughout that race. I'm sure he was absolutely happy to be out on track this evening. Mario Vlasic comes home in 7th position. Sean Thompson for Valkyrie Sim Racing, good result for him in 8th position. Scott Gamble got a last lap pass on Matt Bungleton to finish 9th, with Matt finishing in 10th.
In position number 11, Mihail Ladashov had a shot at the top 10, but couldn't quite do it in the end on that last lap. Steve Jensen brings it home in position number 12, with Luke Page in 13th. Rob Harris and Greg Sharp walk away with top 15s, with Dave Cameron being the last driver to pit, also the last driver to actually survive Spa-Francorchamps, as we have a pretty long list of casualties, including Corey Preston, Brett Loxton, and Michael Taliancic, all on the same lap. Matt Strafford 1 lap earlier, and then Ben Christensen, Matthew Dees, Simon Pitt, and Craig Jones all running into issues earlier on in this 26-lap race, which produced some of the best racing I've seen in this series for a very long time. But Zach, here on SimSpeed TV, normally we are the start of a pretty long week of broadcast. This week, we've only got the 2, and they're both on Saturday. Of course, we have the Majors Series, which should be another exciting race as well, with a variety that always picks up, as well as Max Bant. So a very different flavor of broadcast on this week.
Yeah, and I can't imagine why you would be excited for Max Bantz at all. What's your official title again?
Son of Banter.
Son of Banter. King of Banter. So hopefully we can give that title to somebody else, because you definitely don't deserve it. Thank you very much. We love each other here at SimSpeed TV, and of course,
get out of my commentary booth.
Bo and I are very happy teammates, of course.
That crash into each other at Monza.
Yeah, and also win the 24 Hours of Daytona together. Don't forget that part.
I won't forgive that, and I won't let you even do the outro, because we'll wrap things up here at SimSpeed TV. Thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you on Saturday night, and see you next time.
Fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction. He's going the outside. Both of them. Maloney.
Oh, he's taking Anderson. Anderson's up to him.
Oh my God. Oh, big crash. Oh my goodness. Half the field's going to get rolled.
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go. Oh no.
That's massive. This is it. This is over. I can't believe this. Oh my God.
God, what?